The sun rises over the Philippine Sea, June 19, 1944. The sky is a pale blue, streaked with thin clouds. Below, the ocean stretches for hundreds of miles, calm but hiding danger. On the decks of American aircraft carriers, pilots check their gear. The air smells of oil and salt. Engines rumble, echoing across the water. Some men glance at the horizon, searching for enemy planes. Others grip their helmets, silent and tense. What will the day bring? Will they return or vanish into the endless blue? Far away, Japanese carriers launch their own waves. The distance between the two fleets is like a vast chessboard, each side moving pieces in a deadly game. The pilots know their lives depend on skill, luck, and the machines they fly. The roar of engines grows louder. In moments, the sky will fill with hundreds of planes, each one a dart thrown in a storm. As the first squadrons lift off, the fate of the Pacific hangs in the balance. What made these aviators ready for this moment? The answer lies in the years and battles that led them here. In the spring of 1944, the Pacific War had reached a critical point. The United States Navy, after years of hard fighting, was pushing closer to Japan's home islands. The capture of the Marianas, a group of islands about 2,400 kilometers from Tokyo, became the next goal. Why did these islands matter so much? They offered airfields for B-29 bombers, which could reach Japan's cities. For the Japanese, losing the Marianas would mean opening the door to devastating air raids. The American fleet gathered in strength. Task Force 58, led by Admiral Mark Mitcher, included 15 fast aircraft carriers, 7 battleships, 21 cruisers, and 67 destroyers. That's over 900 aircraft ready for battle. The Japanese, under Admiral Jisaburo Ozawa, brought 9 carriers, 5 battleships, 13 cruisers, and 31 destroyers. Their air groups numbered about 450 planes. The odds seem stacked, but numbers alone don't decide battles. What about training, tactics, and technology? Carrier warfare was still new. Just 3 years earlier, at Pearl Harbor, Japan had shown the world how powerful carrier-based air strikes could be. But by 1944, the U.S. Navy had learned fast. Pilots trained for months, flying hundreds of hours. New planes like the Grumman F6F Hellcat replaced older models. The Hellcat could reach speeds of 610 kilometers per hour and climb to 6,000 meters in minutes. It was tough, like a steel hammer compared to the lighter Japanese Zero. By June 1944, the U.S. Navy had launched over 100,000 carrier sorties in the Pacific. The Japanese faced problems. Their best pilots had been lost in earlier battles, Coral Sea, Midway, and the Solomons. New recruits had less than 100 hours of flight time. Their planes, like the Mitsubishi A6M0, were fast and agile but lacked armor. Would skill or numbers win the day? Could technology make up for lost experience? The stage was set for a clash unlike any before. The Philippine Sea, stretching over 5 million square kilometers, became the arena. The weather was clear, with winds at 15 knots and waves rising just 1 meter. Radar, a new tool, scanned the skies for incoming threats. The fleets moved like 2 armies on a vast, shifting field. Task Force 58's carriers could launch a full strike in under 30 minutes, a speed unmatched in 1944. As dawn broke on June 19th, both sides prepared for battle. The outcome would depend on more than just ships and planes. It would test the nerves, skills, and choices of every aviator. What events led these men to this moment? To answer, we must look back at the months and years before the battle. The road to the Philippine Sea began years earlier, shaped by hard lessons and bitter losses. After the attack on Pearl Harbor in December 1941, the U.S. Navy faced a steep climb. Carriers became the new kings of the ocean, but how do you fight a war when your best ships are sunk or damaged? The answer was to adapt, train, and build fast. By 1942, the U.S. had learned from painful defeats. At the Battle of Coral Sea in May, and then at Midway in June, American aviators showed that skill and luck could turn the tide. At Midway, 4 Japanese carriers were lost in a single day. Was it just luck, or did new tactics make the difference? Pilots began to fly in coordinated groups called combat air patrols, circling their carriers like hawks. They learned to attack in waves, overwhelming enemy defenses. At Midway, U.S. dive bombers sank 3 Japanese carriers in just 5 minutes. The pace of change was relentless. New carriers rolled out of American shipyards every few months. The Essex class, with a flight deck over 260 meters long, could launch dozens of planes at once. Training schools turned out pilots by the thousands. But numbers alone weren't enough. How do you teach a young pilot to survive a dogfight at 500 kilometers per hour? Instructors drilled them in gunnery, formation flying, and emergency landings. Mistakes were costly, but every lesson saved lives. Meanwhile, the Japanese Navy struggled to replace its losses. Their training program, once the best in the world, was cut short by war demands. New pilots got just a fraction of the hours their predecessors had. Their carriers, like the Shokaku and Zuikaku, were still powerful, but their air groups were thin. Could they hold the line against a growing American tide? By 1944, the U.S. was producing over 2,000 carrier aircraft each month. Technology also played a role. American ships bristled with radar, able to spot enemy planes over 150 kilometers away. Japanese ships relied more on lookouts and radio reports. The difference was like using a flashlight in the dark versus feeling your way by hand. The U.S. also improved anti-aircraft guns, adding faster-firing 40mm Bofors and 20mm Oerlikons. These weapons could fill the sky with steel, making it deadly for attacking planes. As the Marianas Campaign began, both sides knew what was at stake. For the U.S., victory would bring Japan within reach of heavy bombers. For Japan, defeat would mean losing the outer shield of their empire. The fleets moved into position, each commander weighing risks and opportunities. Would experience or desperation decide the outcome? The stage was set, the players ready. Now the focus shifts to the many angles that shape the coming battle. Carrier warfare in the Philippine Sea was more than just ships and planes. It was a test of people, tactics, machines, and the environment. Each angle reveals a new layer of the story. How did human skill, technology, and leadership shape the outcome? What role did the enemy's choices and the sea itself play? First, consider the human angle. American aviators in 1944 were often just 20 or 21 years old. Many had trained for over a year, logging 300 to 400 flight hours before seeing combat. Their Japanese counterparts, by contrast, sometimes had less than 100 hours. Imagine learning to drive a car, then being sent into a race against seasoned professionals. The difference in experience was stark. U.S. pilots flew the F6F Hellcat, a plane with thick armor and 6.50 caliber machine guns. Japanese pilots flew the Zero, light and nimble but fragile. Would courage or caution win the day? On June 19, 1944, U.S. aviators shot down over 200 Japanese planes in a single day. Next, the tactical angle. American carriers operated in tight groups called task forces. Each task force was like a moving fortress, with destroyers and cruisers forming a protective ring. Radar gave early warning, allowing fighters to intercept enemy planes before they reached the fleet. Japanese carriers, spread out over wider distances, struggled to coordinate attacks. Their planes often arrived piecemeal, like raindrops instead of storm. Could better tactics overcome raw numbers? Task Force 58's radar picked up the first Japanese strike at 10 a.m., giving defenders 45 minutes to prepare. Technology was another key angle. The Hellcat's rugged design let it absorb damage and keep flying. Its engine produced 2,000 horsepower, enough to climb quickly and outpace most rivals. American ships used radar to guide fighters and direct anti-aircraft fire. Japanese planes, though fast, lacked self-sealing fuel tanks and armor. The difference was like wearing a raincoat in a storm versus braving it in a t-shirt. Would technology tip the scales? The F6F Hellcat's kill ratio in the battle was nearly 7-to-1 against Japanese aircraft. Leadership shaped every move. Admiral Mitcher, commanding Task Force 58, trusted his pilots, and gave them freedom to act. He coordinated strikes with precision, launching waves of planes in minutes. Admiral Ozawa, leading the Japanese fleet, faced tough choices. Should he risk his carriers to protect the Marianas, or hold back for a better chance? Each decision carried weight, like a chess master choosing between attack and defense. Mitcher's order to launch a late-afternoon strike led to the longest carrier air raid of the war. The enemy's perspective shaped the battle in unexpected ways. Japanese commanders believed their pilots could strike first and hard, hoping to catch the Americans off guard. But with fewer experienced aviators and scattered formations, their attacks often lost momentum. It's like trying to break down a door with a handful of pebbles instead of a sledgehammer. The U.S. Navy's radar and fighter patrols blunted these attacks before they could do real damage. Japanese carrier Taiho was sunk by a single American submarine torpedo, showing how vulnerable even the largest ships could be. The moral and ethical angle also played a role. Both sides knew the stakes were high. For American pilots, the mission was clear: protect the fleet and win control of the skies. For Japanese aviators, it was often a one-way trip. Many were ordered to press attacks even when the odds were hopeless. The difference in mindset was sharp. Is it braver to fight against impossible odds, or wiser to preserve lives for another day? Over 600 Japanese aircrew were lost in the battle, compared to fewer than 50 Americans. Terrain and weather shaped every move. The Philippine Sea is vast, with few islands and unpredictable winds. Pilots had to navigate by compass and radio, sometimes flying hundreds of kilometers over open water. A sudden storm could scatter formations or force emergency landings. The ocean itself was both a shield and a trap. Downed pilots might survive in a life raft, but rescue was never certain. How do you fight when the battlefield is always moving? On June 20, 1944, over 80 American planes ran out of fuel returning from a late strike, forcing dozens of emergency water landings. Finally, the psychological angle. The Great Marianas Turkey Shoot, as the battle became known, boosted American morale. Pilots saw their training pay off, while Japanese crews faced the shock of heavy losses. The contrast was like a team winning by a landslide versus one struggling to score. How does victory or defeat shape the next move? With all these angles in play, the stage was set for the battle's turning point, the moment when everything changed. June 19, 1944. The clock strikes 10 a.m. Radar operators aboard the USS Lexington and USS Enterprise spot the first blips, enemy planes 150 kilometers out, closing fast. The order goes out: all hands to battle stations. Pilots race to their Hellcats, engines already warming. The air is thick with tension. Will the defenders hold, or will the Japanese break through? Within minutes, over 220 American fighters are airborne, forming a shield around the fleet. The Japanese launch 4 massive waves, each with 50 to 80 planes. Their goal: punch a hole in the American defenses and strike the carriers. But the U.S. pilots, guided by radar, intercept the attackers far from the fleet. It's like a goalie blocking shots before they reach the net. In the first wave alone, 42 out of 60 Japanese planes are shot down before reaching their targets. The battle rages for hours. American gunners fill the sky with flak, creating a deadly wall. Japanese torpedo bombers dive low, hoping to slip through. Dive bombers climb high, then plunge at steep angles. But the Hellcats are everywhere, turning and firing with deadly accuracy. The difference in training is clear. U.S. pilots fly in tight formations, covering each other's tails. Japanese pilots, less experienced, break formation under fire. By noon, the Turkey Shoot is in full swing. The term comes from the ease with which American pilots shoot down enemy planes. One squadron, the Grim Reapers from USS Essex, claims 15 kills in a single sortie. The air is filled with smoke, burning fuel, and the sound of machine guns. Every minute counts. Can the Japanese break through, or will their losses mount too quickly? By 1 p.m., over 200 Japanese planes had been destroyed, while only a handful of American fighters were lost. Meanwhile, below the waves, American submarines stalk the Japanese fleet. USS Albacore and USS Cavallo slip past destroyer screens, hunting for carriers. At 11:52 a.m., Albacore fires a spread of torpedoes at Taiho, the Japanese flagship. One torpedo hits, rupturing fuel tanks. Fumes spread through the ship, and a spark triggers a massive explosion. Taiho sinks, taking over 1,600 men with her. The loss is a hammer blow to Japanese morale. Taiho was the newest and most advanced Japanese carrier, lost in less than 12 hours of combat. As the afternoon wears on, the Japanese launch more attacks, but each wave is smaller and less coordinated. American pilots, running low on fuel and ammunition, press their advantage. The sky is littered with parachutes and burning wrecks. The sea below is dotted with oil slicks and debris. The defenders have held, but the day is not over. The sun begins to set, casting long shadows over the fleet. Admiral Mitcher faces a choice: launch a risky late strike against the retreating Japanese, or hold back and conserve his forces. The next move will decide the fate of the battle. As daylight fades on June 20th, 1944, Admiral Mitcher makes his decision. He orders a full strike against the retreating Japanese fleet, even though the sun is sinking and fuel is low. Over 200 American planes, Hellcats, Avengers, and Helldivers, launch from the decks of Task Force 58. The pilots know the risks. Can they find the enemy in the vast sea and return before darkness falls? The strike group covers over 320 kilometers in less than 2 hours, racing against time and fuel. The Japanese fleet is scattered, trying to escape. American pilots spot the carriers Hyo, Zuikaku, and Chiyoda. They dive in, dropping bombs and torpedoes. Hyo takes a direct hit and erupts in flames. Zuikaku, the last survivor of the Pearl Harbor attack force, dodges several bombs but suffers heavy damage. Chiyoda is crippled. The attacks are relentless, like a hammer pounding on a weakening wall. Hyo sinks with over 250 crew lost. Zuikaku limps away, barely afloat. The Americans press their advantage, but the clock is ticking. Fuel gauges drop toward empty. Some pilots radio for help, knowing they may not make it back. The sky grows dark, and the ocean below is a black mirror. Mitcher, realizing the danger, orders all ships to turn on their lights, a risky move, but the only hope for lost aviators. The fleet glows in the night, guiding home the weary pilots. Over 80 planes run out of fuel and ditch in the sea. Rescue teams work through the night, saving most of the downed crews. The Japanese fleet, battered and broken, retreats toward Okinawa. They have lost 3 carriers, Taiho, Shokaku, and Hyo, and over 600 aircraft. The Americans lose fewer than 130 planes, most to fuel shortages rather than enemy action. The scale of victory is clear. The Great Marianas Turkey Shoot has changed the balance of power in the Pacific. As dawn breaks on June 21st, the U.S. fleet stands ready. The Marianas are secure, and the path to Japan is open. The battle's aftermath will shape the next phase of the war. The morning after the battle, the Philippine Sea is quiet. Wreckage floats on the waves, pieces of planes, oil slicks, and empty life rafts. The U.S. Navy counts its losses, 123 aircraft, most lost to fuel. Shortages and 76 aircrew missing or dead. For the Japanese, the numbers are far worse. 3 carriers, Taiho, Shokaku, and Hyo, are gone. Over 600 aircraft have been destroyed, and more than 3,000 sailors and airmen are dead or missing. The scale of destruction is hard to grasp. How does a fleet recover from such a blow? Japanese carrier air power is reduced by over 75 in just 2 days. The impact on strategy is immediate. The Japanese Navy, once feared for its carrier strikes, can no longer mount large-scale air attacks. Their remaining carriers have few planes and even fewer trained pilots. It's like a football team losing its quarterback and half its players in a single game. The Americans, by contrast, have proved their training and technology work. Their carriers remain strong, and new planes arrive every week. Morale shifts sharply. U.S. pilots celebrate the Turkey Shoot, sharing stories of dogfights and daring rescues. Japanese survivors face grim reality. Many lost friends and mentors, and some returned to find their squadrons wiped out. The loss of Taiho, the newest and most advanced carrier, is a bitter blow. Can the Japanese Navy recover, or is this the beginning of the end? By July 1944, the U.S. Navy controlled the skies over the Marianas, paving the way for ground invasions. The battle's effects ripple outward. With the Marianas secure, American forces begin bombing Japan's home islands. B-29 superfortresses, each carrying up to 9,000 kilograms of bombs, launch from new airfields on Saipan and Tinian. The Japanese homeland, once out of reach, is now vulnerable. The shift is dramatic, like opening a locked door with a new key. The loss of experienced Japanese pilots cannot be replaced. Training programs are rushed, but new recruits lack the skills needed for complex carrier operations. The U.S. Navy, meanwhile, refines its tactics, learning from every mission. The balance of power in the Pacific has shifted, and the consequences will be felt for months to come. The aftermath sets the stage for new challenges and decisions. How will both sides respond to the changed landscape? In the weeks following the battle, the Japanese Navy faces a crisis. Their carrier force, once the pride of the fleet, is now a shadow of its former self. Only Zuikaku and a handful of smaller carriers remain, with barely enough planes to fill their decks. The loss of trained aircrew is even more severe. How can a Navy fight without its best pilots? It's like trying to play chess with half the pieces missing. By August 1944, Japanese carrier air groups have less than 100 operational aircraft. American forces move quickly. With control of the skies, they invade Saipan, Guam, and Tinian. The battles are fierce, but U.S. air support makes a difference. Bombers and fighters strike Japanese positions, clearing the way for ground troops. The Marianas become a fortress, launching daily raids against Japan. The psychological impact is huge. Japanese leaders realize their outer defenses are crumbling, and the homeland is now exposed. B-29 bombers from the Marianas begin attacking Tokyo in November 1944, flying over 2,500 kilometers each way. The shift in naval strategy is clear. The Japanese Navy turns to kamikaze tactics, sending pilots on suicide missions against American ships. It's a desperate move, born from the loss of experienced aviators and modern carriers. The U.S. Navy adapts, improving anti-aircraft defenses and rescue operations. The lessons of the Philippine Sea shape every new battle. Reports from survivors paint a vivid picture. American pilots recall the glow of carrier lights guiding them home, a lifeline in the dark. Japanese airmen describe confusion and chaos, with many never seeing their targets. The contrast is sharp like night and day. The battle's legacy is not just in numbers, but in the stories of those who fought and survived. By the end of 1944, the U.S. Navy had launched over 150,000 carrier sorties in the Pacific. The Battle of the Philippine Sea marks a turning point. Carrier warfare will never be the same. The lessons learned about training, technology, and leadership will shape the future of naval aviation. The world watches as the Pacific War enters its final phase. The Battle of the Philippine Sea stands as a moment when skill, technology, and preparation changed the course of history. Why did American naval aviators succeed where others failed? Was it just better machines or something deeper, a culture of learning, adapting, and working together? The answers echo through every mission flown and every decision made. Carrier warfare, once a gamble, became a science. The lessons of radar, formation flying, and teamwork turned the ocean into a chessboard where every move mattered. The difference between victory and defeat was often as thin as a cloud or as quick as a radio call. How many lives were saved by a single warning or lost by a missed signal? The battle showed that preparation is like armor, shielding men from chaos. For the Japanese Navy, the loss was more than ships and planes. It was a turning point, forcing new tactics and hard choices. The shift to kamikaze attacks was a sign of desperation, a last attempt to change the tide. For the Americans, the victory opened the door to Japan, but also brought new risks and challenges. What does it mean to win so decisively? Does it make the next step easier or harder? In the end, the Battle of the Philippine Sea was not just about numbers or machines. It was about people, young aviators, commanders, and crews, facing the unknown with courage and skill. Their choices shaped the future of warfare, proving that preparation and teamwork can change the world, even in the face of overwhelming odds.